All right, I want to read you some quotes from Ryan Poles, okay? This is from an article by Dan Graziano. He talked about building teams, building winners in the NFL, and finding the quarterback is like of the utmost importance, right? Like that's where this whole thing starts, obviously. How you construct your roster around that is very important, but there's a part on building culture. And Dan writes, there are areas of roster construction that can be tough to quantify. Team culture and non-football ways in which a player may or may not fit on a roster aren't one size fits all either. A player who's seen as difficult by one team may fit better on another. As several of the general managers interviewed said, a big part of the culture piece, of roster building requires honest self-assessment of your building's infrastructure. What kind of support staff does the team have? Who are the veterans on the roster? Who will have the strongest influence on the player? Who are the coaches? Ryan Poles said he keeps a decision log in which he records every decision he's made since becoming the Bears GM and what he's learned from it. An example, he says, is what kind of an impact a good, respected veteran at a key position can have on the rest of the roster. When we added Montez, there was a real different feel to our defense, Poles said of the 2023 trade for Montez Sweat. I didn't realize the impact it would have when you have a dude at a premium position like that. Other players' confidence and swagger changed once you've got that dude up front. And the accountability, guys just don't want to let a guy like that down. Poles also said his approach to the past offseason changed once the franchise decided it would be picking a quarterback and moving on from Justin Fields. In fact, he made a trade for wide receiver Keenan Allen with the new starting quarterback in mind because of how he plays the game, how much wisdom he has, how quarterback-friendly he is, Poles said. You look at what he did for Herbert in his rookie season, all of that played a role in the decision to pursue that particular player to help the quarterback. And it kind of leads us back to what we talked about when it first happened and a few conversations since about, like, do they want to extend him? I thought at the time it didn't seem unreasonable that it was very much one and done with the idea of helping a rookie quarterback. Right. I'll ask you, Peg, is like a fourth-round pick too much to give up for a one-and-done guy? Or
no, but where he does not. Okay, so you bring in veterans when you have a young quarterback. When you have a veteran quarterback, you can go young with your roster.
Yeah.
You can go with more picks. You can trade down so that you have more guys there with the idea that your veteran quarterback will lift the rest of the roster up. A fourth-round pick, no, that is not too much. Where he did defy the sensibilities of other general managers is twice trading a second-round pick. The first time it did not work out for Chase Claypool. So that, really a second-round pick, you typically don't want to get rid of.
Yeah.
And the fact that he did that, that's probably his riskiest.
That's his biggest miss, right?
Yes. And also the fact that he went back and did it again is pretty interesting.
At least he wasn't afraid to do it again, and they seemingly got a much more productive player.
He had to be given the confidence factor. Kevin Warren, Ian Cunningham, telling him, hey, don't let it affect you. You swung, you miss. You still have more strikes.
Yeah.
So the fact that he did, that tells you a lot about Ryan Poles. As much as he goes by a formula, and he is trying, I know what else is on his list that he keeps notes on. What did they miss in the evaluation of C.J. Stroud? He talked about that's on in his little notebook of what did we miss in this evaluation.
Like, look, at the end of the day, hopefully none of it matters because Caleb's awesome.
Well, and the other thing, it has also bought them another year.
That's true. But if CJ's what we think...
Money-wise. Yeah, but money-wise, it bought them another year. And that is so big in building an NFL roster.
But if CJ's what we all think, it's not going to matter in a few years. Because like you said, you'll be happy to pay him $75 million a year in a few years. Because if he's that good, if he's the third best quarterback in the league.
When you have someone like a Deshaun Watson who takes up like 25% of your roster money... That's not good.
Yeah.
You need to keep your quarterback in the 12, 13 range. So if you have 12, 13%, that's what you have to plan on. When you have to start rewarding these guys like that,
When it goes to 25%.
then your roster better either be complete
Right.
or you better. That's why you start seeing teams getting rid of these veterans who are still good. They can't afford to give them their next contract. And so those are the ones he keeps an eye on. Who is shedding contracts of veterans that are still have a couple years left that we know we're not going to re-sign? We only need them for a year. That's who you keep to plug in your team.
Do it when the
also,
quarterback's young.
I also think it tells you that they think they're close. They think they're close.
I mean, I guess I would feel that way if I were them after all the work they've done in the last couple of off seasons. If Caleb's as good as they believe and we all hope, yeah, I could see where you'd think, okay, now our window's opening, right? Isn't that the way you have to be operating if you're them?
So when we just talked about the White Sox and what free agents would go to the South Side, like no one. It's exactly opposite with what's going on at Hallis Hall.
Yeah.
They see what's going on. They see how they're building the team.
Yeah.
You have a lot better chance of luring those guys there.
Especially if you've got the quarterback, right?
And the Montez Sweat new deal was big.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people thought it was going to be a one and done. Why would they just go get him for the rest of the year?
Yeah,
because they knew that they could re-sign him.
Yeah. That would have been crazy. Yeah, if you've got the quarterback free agents, you'll be attractive in football to free agents.
Oh, that's the number one. If you know that your guy is the guy, free agents have to believe it too. I think it's great, and that's a great article by Dan Graziano.
It was good. It was really detailed, and they covered a lot of ground, and he talked to a bunch of GMs. And if you want to react to it, you can with us at 312-332-3776. We talked a little bit during the lunch rush about the Trevor Lawrence contract and where quarterback contracts are going. And 3-4 years from now, they're going to be approaching $70-75 million per year. That's just where it's going. I mean, the cap's going to keep going up. You're going to see substantial increases in it. The revenues are greater than ever. There's nothing's going to slow that down. Football is as popular as ever.
It's also why the Bears have to get that new stadium. They are going to need those seat licenses. They need that money. If you're paying a quarterback what we think they're going to have to pay Caleb Williams in 3 years, they better get another source of revenue.
Yeah, I mean, but as much as the quarterback salaries are going up, and I guess you're right, like that's still a direct correlation to the amount of revenue they're bringing in primarily from their TV deal.
And with that being said, I believe the TV deal went from 23 to 33, and it's expected in 2 to 3 years to be 64. Like that's funny money.
It's beyond funny money. I mean, it's insane.
That is crazy. Yeah. So yes, they will have the money to pay him.
What do you think about the stadium ultimately? Arlington, or no? Is that like really dead?
I don't think it's dead as long as they still own that land. I don't think it's dead. I do think that Kevin Warren is very set on keeping it in Chicago, and he's just got to get the politicians on his side.
At what point does he want to stop going through all the red tape and just tap out? And
if it's not on the docket next fall with the legislature downstate, they're in trouble then.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, yeah. And, I don't know. Like, they have to come up with all this money themselves now. I don't know. Who's going to do that when you don't even... It's a publicly owned stadium. Who's doing that? You would basically have to sign over every event that takes place at Soldier Field. Everything would go to the Bears.
Yeah, and that's
because
why...
they raise all the money to redo the stadium. And you think the city's going to go for that? Hell no.
Well, not with public funding.
Not even with public. Even if they privately funded it, you think the city?
If they privately
Brandon Johnson will.
It's theirs, though. I mean, I guess that land is not theirs.
It's not. It's publicly owned. Yeah. It's
well, the land is public land, but they would build if they didn't go to the state for money and they privately financed it.
It would still be owned by the Park District.
How could that be?
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
How could that be?
That's why it doesn't make sense to still be a tenant. That's why it doesn't make sense. So that's why I would never count out Arlington Heights
Because they already own that property.
already own that property. And it just seems the infrastructure that needs to be done at Arlington Heights versus downtown Chicago is vastly different. They may have a better chance of getting public money for the infrastructure on the roads for Arlington Heights than they would trying to convince them that it needs to be done here downtown Soldier Field. I don't see that it's there yet. I think it's I think that there's still a long way to go.
Yeah, they're still going to ask for public money even if they go to Arlington Heights. You're right. I don't think they should get any public money. I just don't think that. I think it became common practice for way too long, and it needs to stop.
Well, so if you check the other stadiums across the country that are being built, the $240 million is about the same for the stadiums that did get public funding. They're not going to get billions. It's just not going to happen. So there are governments that still believe, local governments, that it will bring enough in return that they are willing to give. And the average seems to be $240 million. It seems to be $240 million. Everything else is going to have to be privately raised.
Okay.